it feels like every episode we're not waiting for a trade, but there's still that one that, with the Kevin Durant trade still being looming and lingering, it feels like there's a lot of the market is on hold for that. Though, I mean, I do think it's fair to say we're kind of at the point where not a ton's going to happen, but that gets us really to the latest reports, though, on a different trade front. Donovan Mitchell, as we get into our warm-up jumpers here, it was apparently the Jazz have re-engaged in talks with the Knicks, centered around a Donovan Mitchell trade, of course. If you believe the latest round of reports is that Julius Randle would not be included in a potential deal that goes to Utah. But Chase, I'm just, the more I look at it, I'm kind of at the same point that I am with the Durant trade, where, and obviously Utah, a big part of it, the Gobert trade just really like kind of shifted the market a little bit. It's like Utah is going to be expecting 4 first rounders minimum for Donovan Mitchell. And I mean, we know, Donovan Mitchell was at Rucker Park this week. Like, we know his New York City connections, but it feels like they can already get him in free agency. Like, if you're the Knicks, why are you going to mortgage your entire farm to go get Donovan Mitchell when you could potentially get him for free?
Because they're worried about the Miami Heat. But like, there's probably other teams, but let's be honest. Like, when it comes to free agency, nobody does it better than Pat Riley. Like, he's literally like Thanos and Guardians of the Galaxy. And he's just like, I've got to do this myself. And he puts on his Infinity Gauntlet that has like all of his rings that he has on, and he just like pounds. Like, you know how like when you like put your hand on the table and like you rotate like this little like I don't know if the mic can pick it up, but like that.
No, yeah, no, I feel you though.
Yeah, it's like he just does that, and it's just so much weight. It's 10 pounds of just championships on one hand. And he just does that and goes, look what I can do with just like, look at Duncan Robinson. Like, he just shows him Duncan Robinson, goes, you see what I did with that? Imagine what I can do with
Wait,
you.
wait, now
Imagine
he's stuck on. Wait, now what he did with that? Now Duncan's stuck on the bench and can't get minutes. Are we sure
yeah,
they
but look,
want to
he
have
made
that
him,
contract?
yeah, but he made him great. Like he's made
No,
like
I
like
know. I'm messing
he
around.
made him with like Max Strus. It's like, if I were to tell you like random people, you're just like, wait, is this a G League guy or a star of the Miami Heat? Like, you wouldn't know. It's like Max Strus. You would have thought he was just somebody that played for like the Crabs up in Maine. Like, that's
Yeah,
the thing. So I think the Knicks right now are not the quote free agency destination that their fans, their delusional fan base seems to think that they are. Like, it's not a good place to go. And so, yeah, he might want to go home, but he also, wants to win. And so
yeah,
what do you have to do?
I agree to an extent. I think. I mean, I always say I have a rule of thumb that there are always 3 universal free agency destinations in the NBA, and it just doesn't matter based on the organization. As long as they're competent, they're going to get at least a look. And those are the Lakers, the Heat, which you just mentioned. I do think the Knicks are in that category. Now, obviously, I think because of the dysfunction previously surrounding the Knicks, they haven't been quite the destination that they should be. Word to Kevin Durant and Kyrie opting to play in Brooklyn instead of in New York. But all they have to do is be competent and get a meeting. And I think it is different when they're from home. Like Donovan Mitchell, of course, Miami, I think, is going to be interested in Donovan Mitchell and is going to try to swoop in and poach him and put a full court press on. Absolutely. But I think Donovan Mitchell has made it pretty clear that he's certainly interested in going back to New York. Like, I think he relishes that challenge a little bit. I mean, it reminds me of the way with Carmelo, right? Like,
Mhm.
Carmelo all but telegraphed he wanted to go play in New York. Like, he's a New York guy generally. I mean, I think, and there are reasons to want to go play in New York right now. Like, there are young guys there that you can be excited about. Like, I like RJ Barrett still. I'm a buyer in his upside. A big Emmanuel quickly guy. When he's healthy, I like Mitchell Robinson too. Like, their contracts, for as big money as they've given out to some of these vets recently, the contracts kind of are team friendly. Like, they're movable, I guess. Like, they may have been overpaying a couple of these guys, but they're deals that you can move on from. Like, they're not players who just are completely useless. Like, that sounds harsh, but they who could go contribute somewhere else. And so I get, but my point is, you're going to have to give all that up to get Donovan Mitchell. Like, it's going to cost you 4 picks minimum, plus how many, like RJ Barrett's going at that point if they're not taking Randall, and then what, 1 or 2 other young guys. Like, at that point, yeah, guys are going to come in and play in New York. Like, you're going to be able to sign a couple guys, but it sure feels like you're going to sap your depth that you're going to need if you're going to compete with a Boston, a Milwaukee, a Miami, a Philly, who at that point would be way deeper post trade.
Right. I think Boston is a suitable team that I don't think has to give up a lot. Like they would probably have to give up Jalen Brown in that deal, but I feel like if you are a team like Orlando, for example, like Sacramento, like a team that's rebuilding and like you starting to see all your components. I don't know why I said Sacramento. They've been irrelevant for the past 50 years, it feels like.
Whoa, oh, Chase, hang on. Are you buying the Sacramento hype this year?
No, I never buy into the
Oh
Sacramento.
no, we're low already. I bought in. I bought stock. I'm not gonna
No,
lie. I'm
because
there.
because here's the thing, like, you know how many times I've bought into the Sacramento Kings stock thinking, "Oh, they've actually kind of looked good." And the answer is largely they're not. Like, that's the thing. Is like I was high on Marvin Bagley. Like people could say, "Oh, like,
Oh, I
they're
wasn't.
stupid." Oh, I was high on Marvin Bagley. Like, and it might have been the Duke bias, but like I saw him play. I'm like, dude, that guy is legit.
Mm.
And then all of a sudden, like the Kings ruined him. And I have a feeling like if Marvin Bagley like goes elsewhere, he's probably gonna
No,
be
hang on, because he's already kind of in Detroit. Like that's a big if. He's getting more minutes, and I think he'll be better in Detroit. But like Bagley just might be a stiff, as much as I hate to say it. I think for me with the Kings this year is I think Keegan Murray is just that guy. Like I'm big on Keegan. Like I think he's going to be in the Rookie of the Year conversation.
yes.
I mean I like Sabonis a lot too. Like I thought he was a good pickup. He's still going to contribute there. If they get good De'Aaron Fox back, like I feel you, dude. It's the Kings. I know they're cursed, but like they're gonna hang around play-in position. I think they're gonna be a much tougher out than they've been in the past.
I think that's fair. I was mostly shaking my head, and it wasn't because of your Kings hype. It was because of Domantas Sabonis, Magic legend,
Oh yeah.
because we could have had him, and I feel like we wouldn't have been as depressing if we would have had him. We would have had like that glimmer of hope that at least
Oh,
like
you got hope now though. That's
now
you're
we do.
fine.
Oh, we'll get into that later. But it's just like it's just it makes me angry because it's like you know how like sometimes you'll think of a moment and like your ex is involved and you get like immediately angry. That's how I get sometimes where I look at Rob Hennigan and I'm just like, I bleeping hate you, Rob Hennigan, after I've defended you so many times and you screw me over with this stupid Victor Oladipo Serge Ibaka deal. It's like I
Oh,
could have
dude,
had
that
Sabonis.
yeah, I can't
Or
believe you
I
defended him.
technically
That's
could have got I could have had Paul George because of what they had to give up. I could have technically had Paul George.
the Magic could have done so many other things in the 2010s that we don't need to relive post Dwight Howard era.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hennigan was a tough defend. I mean, that was quite literally, in my opinion, the worst front office in the NBA for a couple years there.
Yeah. But
Um,
going back to the original point, I think for the Donovan Mitchell, if he gets traded, he should not be going to a team that is currently rebuilding because you're just going to blow it all up and it's not going to be worth it in the end. You're just going to be going back to like a glorified square one. If you're a team like Boston that can contend, like if you're Philly and you can contend, yeah, I think you should try to maybe make a move at that.
Well, if you're or not Boston, but if you're Donovan Mitchell and you want to ride out a rebuild, ride it out in Utah. Like you've already got the max contract, and in
Mhm.
theory, with all the picks they have now, like you could retool there pretty quick, and the entire team can be around you. I mean, I think it's New York. We'll see if anybody else gets in. Like full disclosure, I don't think Donovan Mitchell's getting moved. Like
No.
I think there's a better chance at this point of KD getting moved because I do. I think Boston can get a KD deal done. I've said it last podcast. I think if Boston comes at you with a deal of Jalen Brown, the two Williamses, Grant and Rob, and 3 first rounders, I think you got a bite if you're Brooklyn. Like
Yes.
that's a great deal on the low.
Yes. And
Like
I feel like the I think what's his Time Lord is incredibly underrated. Like I think he's a very solid player. And I remember you came on my show and you were hyping about it. And it's like, and as I watched him more closely, it's like, oh yeah, like you definitely need Robert Williams like on your roster because he just I don't know. I liked
no,
his
he's just an
performance.
elite defender. Like he's an
Yeah.
old school elite interior defender. I mean, statistically, when Boston was at their, I mean, Marcus Smart obviously won DPOY and gets a lot of the hype because, and rightfully, like the perimeter is extremely hard to defend. He deserves a lot of credit there. But
Fifth
it's
best
like,
defender on his team. Come on.
well, and when they were elite, that's when it was when Rob Williams was healthy. Like when he, even with this meniscus injury, like he was maybe at 80% and he was one of the most impactful players on the floor in the
Yes.
entire finals. Like the dude is great. Like he's, I mean, and obviously I'm still pretty high on Jalen Brown as well. I wouldn't trade Jalen Brown for Donovan Mitchell. I
No.
would for KD, but I wouldn't for Donovan Mitchell.
Granted, I say no, I wouldn't trade Donovan Mitchell for or Jaylen Brown for Donovan Mitchell, even though I just said like a few minutes ago. Like I'm saying it was gonna be a player like that caliber.
Oh no, I know 100%. I'm saying if
I'm
I'm
covering
Boston.
my ass because the last time I was on here, I accidentally forgot that Kevon Looney was still on the Warriors, and I thought he'd left for some reason.
He was really great for them last year too. Big man got rewarded. Definitely deserved
Oh.
that. Welcome everybody to the Drive and Dish NBA podcast. My name is Kevin Rayfuse. Justin Kuzart is out venturing in Jackson Hole right now. He hiked a mountain. He sent a video of a bear that he ran into earlier, and yeah, he's all right. He's not gonna. He didn't like. I'm not gonna have an RIP podcast next to one. That would be just the worst thing of all time, actually. But in his place this episode, Chase Bunker. Follow him on Twitter at Chase Bunker. Bunker's Burning Hot Take podcast. You can find it anywhere you find a podcast, much like this show. I've been on there a couple times. You also, if you're in the Jacksonville area, can hear Chase giving you the news every day on WOKV 104.5. A Big J journalist.
Please, I barely. I'm a like maybe lowercase j, but without the dot.
That's fine. You're being humble. You work in a top 35 radio market in the country, and you're doing the news on a great, highly rated Marconi winning award winning radio station. I just raised $300,000 for the child cancer fund, so that's pretty exciting as well.
Yes. I think that was the big one, just like seeing them, like the effort that was put into that and just to see them get rewarded. Now, I do feel bad for the morning show host because he now has to lay asphalt for an entire day.
Oh no! First off, we can say who it is because Rich Jones deserves all the credit in the world for this because
Yes.
this really is his baby. Like it's only 8
Mhm.
years old. I cannot wait because I did actually. I listened the other day. That's the thing about being out now is like I can listen to all sorts of radio whenever I want.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, so I listened the other morning. Yeah, I can't wait to see the videos of him.
I
I hope it's not during the summer. Like obviously it's 100 zillion degrees down there right now. At least like do it. Can they do it in November? Maybe.
maybe. So here's the thing. I'll take you a little bit behind the curtain. I texted him during Carathon and I said, if you want for like a challenge, I'm willing to get my legs waxed if like a certain milestone gets reached in a certain time. And I went through all the proper channels and I said, well, my proper channels, I mean, will my wife get mad at me if I did this? And she did not get mad. So I said, all right, we're in the clear. And he said, I'll think about it. And then as soon as like they reached the 300,000, he goes, I really should have made you just get your legs waxed. And I went,
Right, that's what I'm
yeah.
saying. You got to suffer through it together. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, either way, great for the kids.
Yeah.
Anyway, leave us a review on iTunes, good or bad. We'll read them on the podcast. If you're not an Apple user, Google Play Store, Spreaker, Spotify, TuneIn, Amazon Music, anywhere you find podcasts, you can find us. You also can watch the video form of the podcast right now. Just search the Drive and Dish NBA podcast on YouTube. Probably should have had this pulled up before, but I'm going to check the subscriber number real quick. We're going for 49 last episode. Yeah, we're still going for 49. Full disclosure, it stinks in terms of NBA numbers. So, a lot of times you get a gem. At 50, you'll get a gem for whoever 50 is. You get Zach Randolph, but yeah, not great for 49, but should still be it anyway because it'll be something that you can have a good laugh about, right?
It's like podcast or like subscriber numbers are always just like depressing with me sometimes, but like you'll always find one. Like I haven't uploaded content on my gaming channel in like a year and a half. And for some reason, like I'll see people like, oh, you just subscribed. Like, why? And there is one 16-second clip of me singing the song I Will Give You My All from the game Payday 2 with the composer, and it's garnered over 70,000 views. And I just go, why are people watching this?
It's the internet, bro. Like it's always random. There's never any rhyme or reason to it because I think you see when people try to go viral, it usually doesn't end up working. It's I think the only thing that's consistent is it's usually got to be organic in nature. I think that's when it takes off is when people actually feel like it's a thing. But, what do I know?
Yeah.
I don't work in social media. And now a word from our sponsors. All right. So LeBron James coming back to LA. I mean, not really the biggest surprise in the world, but the news dropped about 3 days ago now. We're recording this on a Friday night, actually, a little late night Friday podding. But yeah, LeBron going back to LA, $97 million, 2-year deal. It's essentially a 1+1. He's got the option in the second year Apparently all the reports say obviously that he's hoping for a major roster overhaul. But I also go back to the point where I don't know what that looks like without trading Anthony Davis. I mean, the Russell Westbrook contract is going to run out. Like, there's going to be over the lifespan of this contract. Like, so they'll have the chance to retool the roster when that money gets off the books. But I mean, again, it all goes back to the greater point this offseason that I think the Lakers, if they get a healthy Anthony Davis in the mix, will be better. But we're still kind of limited here. Like, and there's not really much else they can do. Like, yeah, they're going to punt some of those maybe later draft picks. Like when we really start getting down the road, when we're talking like, 2029 and even 2031, which sounds ridiculous to say at this point, but like you can start trading first rounders, but you're not really going to get a ton for that right now. And it's just unless they're able to, unless it's like you mentioned Miami earlier, where they're able to find some diamonds in the rough here, and maybe that's what they're able to do. But um, I'm more intrigued in the Lakers than I was last year. But I guess that's all because of Anthony Davis. Like, as big of people would say it's a prove it year for Russ, but I don't think it is at all. I think we know exactly what Russ is at this point. For Anthony Davis, yeah, we might be on to a prove it year at this point if he's going to be a true number one guy that you build your team around. Because LeBron was supposed to be taking the back seat at this point.
I mean, that's the thing is that your key word is a healthy Anthony Davis. When on earth has he ever been healthy? Just period. Like,
No, I mean, not consistently, like 1 or 2 years, really.
I think that's a stretch, honestly. That too, like that's the thing. Like when people were saying, "Oh, he's got Anthony Davis, that's a strong one too." It's like, okay, when he plays, like the reason the Lakers won, honestly, the NBA championship in 2020 is because they had such a long gap for him to actually be healthy. Like that was probably the most healthy Anthony Davis has ever been was in that bubble, and that was it. So you know what? You could thank COVID, Anthony Davis, for that ring because you would have never gone in any place else or any other time. Like that's the thing that always baffles me when everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, like Anthony Davis is a star." But it's like when he's on the court, cool, but like clearly he's been hampered for like the past decade, and I know there's a bit of a stretch there, but at the same time, like we can't rely on Anthony Davis anymore. Like
I I think
tell me
you
once, shame
can't.
on you. Tell me 10 times, shame on me.
I think you can't because this is tough because I don't think Anthony Davis is Zion. Like, put it this way, like I don't think there's a genuine get on the floor risk. Like Anthony Davis has played the majority of most of these years. I think the question is, and again, thank God for 2020. Like you said, that ring does change this. This discourse is a lot more toxic if they don't have that ring in 2020. I mean, you can't really take that away. Like he was a definitive great player on a championship team. Like there were no doubt that he and LeBron were the two best players, the thing that everybody operated around. And so to that extent, Anthony Davis and LeBron James, to me at least, can never be considered a failure in LA. Like you brought home a title, no matter what, you've already succeeded in your mission. I think the question though is because I mean we saw it towards the end of New Orleans. Like I always go back to that year when Dame swept them out of the playoffs. There's were a lot of people who were just wondering if Anthony Davis was that true number one option. Now I think that's where I kind of agree with you in the sense that I don't know if he's reliable enough to be a consistent number one option. If he was healthy all the time and playing the way that I think he can, and that's what I think everybody gets frustrated about at the end of the day, right? Is I feel like it feels like with Anthony Davis, there's just a lot of meat left on the bone. Like this guy has all the talent in the world. He was the consensus number one pick. This is a guy who was on the Olympic team before he'd even played a single pro game. And I don't want to say because obviously he's far from a bust. Like Anthony Davis has been a great NBA player,
Yes.
again, won a title, multiple all-star teams. Like there should never be a doubt about that. But I do think it's a prove it year in the sense that it's like, yeah, if Anthony Davis is proving here that he's a bona fide franchise player, that when LeBron eventually either retires or goes to play with Bronny or whatever the situation is here, you know, ideally, again, this was supposed to be set up where he was going to be, Mr. Laker. Like he's supposed to be kind of their guy there in the future. That's a valid question, depending on it, how it is with that health. And so to that extent, I do agree. And I think that it's a big prove it year for that reason.
Since getting into the league in 2012, Anthony Davis has played over 70 games in the regular season twice since 2016, 2017, 2017, 2018. Since that season, he has played over 60 games once. It was his first year in LA.
Wow. Damn.
You cannot stay healthy. And even in that 2020 year, he played 36 games. Like he played 36 games that entire regular season.
That
And
is bleaker than I thought. I knew he missed a lot of time, but that is a little bleaker than I thought it was. And again, that 60 win again. Thank God for that title. Like that's the biggest thing
mhm.
is for both. I mean,
We would call that era of LeBron a failure if it wasn't for that.
oh yeah, 150%. Like there were people that already debate if LeBron's Lakers tenure is a failure, and I think that's an insane debate because they won a title. Like, give me a break. Like, I would, you know, you're a Magic fan. I'm a Sixers fan. Are you kidding me? Like, I would do. Listen, give me one title, and that's all I need at this point.
Yes.
I'm never going to call a championship winning era a failure. I think the question is for a lot of people, is LeBron going to cement himself in the all-time Laker greats like over these last? Because you know he'll have been there probably like probably 6 or 7 years when all is said and done when he retires. And you know the question is, can you be? I mean, obviously we know what he is in terms of talent, but it's like, can you put yourself in the Kobe, Kareem, Magic, James Worthy, Jerry West, Elgin Baylor conversation, et cetera, et cetera? I think that's an uphill climb, but that was always going to be an uphill climb. Like he didn't spend enough time there. And it's not like the situation with LeBron in Miami, in my opinion, where, yeah, LeBron was only in Miami for 4 years, but he was at the peak of his powers then. Like he was
Yes.
really, like, at least athletically, like that was his prime. You know, LeBron's into his 30s now at this point. If anything, it's more of a marvel that he's still as good as he is.
Yeah, and I think like that's a very good point. I think that could probably discuss like later on, maybe probably towards the end of his tenure. But like, I think if you were to stay 5 years for any other organization, with the exception of maybe like the Knicks, yeah, you'd be a top five player, no problem. But I think because of that rich history of the Lakers, like you
Yeah.
said, Kobe, Shaq, Worthy, Kareem,
I didn't even
Magic.
mention Shaq. That was crazy. I didn't even mention Shaq
Yeah,
in that sentence.
we all
Like,
we all instinctively just thought like Shaq. Like that was like the one time we all became unified as a country, just sound like, yeah, Shaq and all that. Like automatically, like that's such a hard like bar to like pass. Like, who do you take off? Like, that's the thing. Like, who do you take off over late 30s LeBron?
yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's and like like Wilt Chamberlain too. We can talk about Wilt, like having spent a couple years there.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, it the Lakers' history is as rich as it gets. Obviously, their all-time roster is, I mean, Boston. It's the Lakers and Boston are the only
Yes.
ones that are really in the same ballpark. Um, I don't know. That is an interesting conversation after that because I think nobody would really argue that those are one and two. And then the question is like, who do you got like 3, 4, and 5? I'm inclined to say I feel like the Warriors should be in there somewhere. Um, the Warriors had, you know, the Run TMC teams, the
Yeah.
teams in the 70s that won a title. They had Wilt going way. I mean, they had prime Wilt when they were playing in Philly. So that would be an interesting one. I think the Sixers could. I think the Spurs could. I mean, the Spurs are more recent, but like you throw George Gervin in there, you got David Robinson prime. I mean, he won titles with them in 99 and '03.
Yeah.
But either way, that'd be interesting. I gotta I'm for sure forgetting somebody here where somebody, I mean, even the Knicks to an extent, if you do their players. Um
Actually, could I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, I might be this might be recency bias. I would think Ewing, at least recently, Ewing and Carmelo, and that's probably it out of recent history. 'Cause
if you're
I don't think, you know, if you put in Larry Johnson, I don't know if you put in, um, Charles Oakley,
well, are
Charles
we doing
Ford.
yeah, I mean, your top end guys, it would for sure be Mello and yeah, it
And
would for
Ewing.
sure be Mello and Ewing. I mean, they have a lot of like secondary guys because you mentioned a couple of those '90s teams. Even the team that made the finals, you know, you get like an Allen Houston in there.
Mhm.
You get a Latrell Sprewell in there,
Marcus
maybe.
Camby,
I mean, Marbury was there too. Like you can start to, and
Starbury.
it has to come down to the question, I guess. You have the prime version, or do you have the version of that person that you had on your team? Because that's obviously, but you know, I would assume the version you had on that team. But
Yeah.
nevertheless, I'm going to think about that. That may be a topic for later.
Mhm.
We'll keep brainstorming there. All right, who's balling, who's falling? Our NBA version of the stock market. We always like start with the good before we start with the bad. Chase, you're the guest, so we will start with you. Who's going first? No pressure at all. Who's balling
Yeah.
for you this week?
Who's fallen for me?
No, balling.
Oh,
No, it started
balling.
good before the bad.
Yeah, we're starting the good before the bad. It helps to listen. Right now, I think what's good for me right now is the Orlando Magic hope in general, because we haven't had this type of feeling in a very, very long time. Like, even after we made to the playoffs, we were like, all right, this is just where we're going to be. We're going to be, first round exit. Yeah, cool, whatever.
Right.
But even when like, even when we've had like the higher picks in the past, we never got excited over any of it. Like the last big win that we've had as a Magic fan, other than the number one pick, was when Jalen Suggs fell to us in 5. Like those are the only 2 recent like good wins that we've had. But other than that, like what Paolo Banchero has done, and we'll probably talk about him in a little bit. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not the boss of your show. You run it. It's the fact that what's balling right now, Magic hope. And I feel like that's a great thing to have for a fan base that's been so decimated with disappointment and embarrassment for the past decade.
Oh, and it's funny because I even joked after the first summer league game when Chet Holmgren went off. I said, "Oh my god, Magic fans are going to be despondent," because it's always like it's always been the one pick away a lot of times because with
Mhm.
Trey Young was one pick away. Even with Jalen Suggs, I mean, I Jalen Suggs I'm still high on overall, but it's like, yeah, Scotty Barnes just won Rookie of the Year. He's one pick before.
Shouldn't have won it.
But regardless, I agree with that too. I think Evan Mobley should have won.
Mhm.
But no, the hope is higher than ever. I mean, Paulo just going out and just looking amazing in the first summer league game. I think reboosted that hope for everybody because I mean that was when the Magic finally got the number one pick, there was that relief. But I do think and Andy Jordan and I, when I had Andy on, talked about this a lot in particular, is that there wasn't that consensus number one this year. There was a genuine debate to be had whether you take Paulo, whether you take Jabari Smith, whether you take Chet Holmgren. Like they all had schools of thoughts that worked, but for the Magic, it was so important more than these other 2 teams to just hit this pick because of you said the past decade. Like they needed this franchise changing guys. The fan base needs something to believe in. And so to that extent, it is. It's like finding the oasis in the desert. I mean, Paulo went out, had a great summer league. We thought he was, I mean, Justin and I talked a lot about how we thought he was the most NBA ready guy right away. I thought Jabari Smith was the best player in the draft, but I'll tell you what, like obviously there were a lot of people who felt that way about Paulo. The Magic clearly did enough to give him that confidence and take him with the number one pick. He's looked good so far. And like you said, when you look at the young core, we've always talked about how they were one piece away. They needed that top end guy. If Paulo is that top end guy, everybody else there, Franz was all rookie first team last year. Markel Fultz is back healthy. You've got
Jonathan
what
Isaac.
Jonathan Isaacs is, I'm fully just it's a concept at this point. I want Jonathan Isaac to be healthy. I do, because that would really take it off. Like if
Yeah.
Isaac can come back and play, I mean, he was the crown jewel of this rebuild for a long time. It's just we haven't seen him since the bubble. Quite literally, we have
Mhm.
not seen him since the
Yes.
bubble. So it's I'm rooting for the kid. I really am, but I'm hard pressed to have any faith there yet. But with the guys who are already like, I'm excited to see Suggs healthier. I'm excited to see maybe Cole Anthony come off the bench where I think he can thrive in that role. Like that's I don't know how many more games they're going to win next year. Like I don't think they're going to be a Cleveland where they win like 15, 16 more games. But they're going to be competitive, and I think they're going to surprise. Like them and Detroit are both young and up and coming, and they're going to surprise a lot of people, and they're going to play you really hard every night.
Even when the team was bad last year, they were still really fun to watch.
They
And I
were.
think with Paolo Banchero, with a healthy Jonathan Isaac, if Jonathan Isaac stays healthy, I'm going to put that caveat
That's
in
just
there.
such a huge if. That's
I
a
know
way bigger if than Anthony Davis
you're,
is.
you're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. If he stays healthy, though, because I want to throw that caveat when I make this bold pick, 6th seed. That
Wow.
team is going to be a
Oh my
6th
god.
seed contending.
I feel like I should have played your intro. Like that was first. That was the hot take. You're going 6 in this Eastern Conference. You think they're going to be a 6?
In this Eastern Conference, 6th seed.
I'm not there.
And possibly flirting with a 5 in that final week.
You think they're flirting with a 5?
I mean, I'm kind of like maybe embellishing a little bit here, but I think I'll probably like when you make fun of me for the pick later and be like, how
No,
are
you're
you?
a psychopath. I respect this pick. I respect the homerism here because this is insane. It's because the East is good now. That's the biggest thing. It's like the Eastern Conference is really good now. Like there's no,
Mhm.
Now, if you wanted to say that they're around 9 and 10 and get in and sneak in, yeah, you could have maybe sold me on that a little bit because I
That's
do.
too
Jamal
easy.
Mosley had them playing great, like he
It's
really
too
did. But
easy to pick. Like I saw like
no,
every
it's on brand. I respect it. It is the bunk.
yeah.
I mean, they don't call the pod bunkers burning hot takes for no reason.
I
So
feel like I haven't done any burning hot takes recently because I've been
that's
interviewing
spicy.
people.
The Magic at 6 is spicy, and if you get Magic at 6 next year, you need to go to Vegas immediately.
I mean, I should have gone to Vegas with Tom Brady originally in 2019.
Oh, that
I'm
was a way. Come on, are you kidding me? That was a you nailed that, but that was a way easier pick.
I mean, I got laughed out of the room when I first said,
You're talking okay, never mind. I'm misunderstanding. You're right. Because you're talking about with him going to Tampa. Yes,
yeah,
you were 100% right about that. Let the record show, and Chase will vouch for me here. I did not laugh you out of the room when you said that. I said it made a lot of sense. I thought
yeah.
you were saying for the Super Bowl. I was like, well, yeah, it's Tom Brady.
Yeah. Oh no, like I no that's easy to say, but like when I say that, 'cause I remember vividly. It was 2019, or it was like just after the Patriots loss. It was I know it was before then. You were in the room, and it was Nick Grunowitz and Jerry Daniels, and I said, "Hey, Tampa Bay, I think he should go there." And you were just like, "Okay, that makes sense." Nick and Jerry laughed me out of the room. I took the biggest victory lap. Still taking the biggest victory lap. It's been 3 years.
Yeah. I mean, look, he won the
It's
Super.
big peak in high school energy, but regardless, I'm going to milk that.
Dude, are you kidding me? I milked the 2017 Super Bowl for at least I mean, it's been 5 years now, and I think I'm still milking that. Like, I watched you kidding me? It's 23 days until the Eagles opener. I watched Rodney McLeod tackling Brandon Cooks in the Super Bowl again today. Like, come on. Y'all know
I mean,
milk.
yeah,
You
I
may not a lot
and
of teams don't get to see championships in their lifetime. Like, it's if anything, milk every moment you can. Like, I've seen 2 championships across 4 major sports. I'm not counting my Chelsea fandom. It's a little newer, and soccer's a little different, but
yeah.
um,
Oh, trust me, I am because of my disappointment with again Orlando. Like the Rays got to the World Series, but they still haven't won it all. Like I'm at least surviving off of the Lightning and the
Chase. I
Buccaneers.
was gonna say Chase. Tampa has 3 titles in the past 3 years. Like what?
How obscure we've been? Do you not know how obscure we've been the
No,
past
I
few years?
no. It's definitely a run, but I mean, yeah. I mean, the Bucks. If this team's not bad though. Lightning have 3
Yeah.
cups since 2000. The Bucks have
Mhm.
2 Super Bowls. The Rays have been close. Obviously, it stinks because they've been there twice and haven't got over the hump yet, and they're still looking for the first one in franchise history. But like, I'm not. I really do not want to hear any complaining from a Tampa sports fan. Right? If you want to complain about the Magic. That
Yes.
like that's fair. That's
That's
valid.
that's the one that I've come to terms with. Like you might, I think you might even admitted this on air, and I don't, I don't want to betray any confidences. Excuse me. Um, I would probably like be like that fan that breaks down and cries like right after like as they win is
Oh,
I won. Like I'm crying harder than any of them. Like that's the one that I would probably do that.
oh, dude, I bawled my eyes out when the Eagles won the Super Bowl, and it was just like it was so uncontrollable and spontaneous. Like that's the thing is, it was like when that ball hit the turf, I didn't even first off, I still thought there was a second left. And then when I realized they won, when Doug Peterson and Deuce Staley hugged each other on the sideline, and I just remember yelling, "It's over" in relief because like it's Tom Brady and the Patriots. It's stressful as hell.
Mhm.
Um, I still think if there's a fifth quarter, the Patriots probably win that game. But I did. I cried like a baby. Like it was happy. Like it was like it's like when you're laughing during it. Like I was like uncontrollably laughing and crying at the same time. Um, but
How
that's
many
just
people
because
texted you after that win?
oh, so many.
I
I
knew I was
honestly and shout out to every single person who did. It was awesome. Like I had it had to be like 35 plus people who texted me after they won because people just knew I mean, and obviously a lot of them were Eagles fans too, so it was a lot of celebration and stuff. But yeah, I mean, the Eagles were. It, there's nothing like just that existential dread being lifted of
Mhm.
going, hey, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, I don't have to hear Super Bowl jokes anymore. Like when you talk smack to your division rivals, like Washington hasn't been relevant since the 90s, but when they go back to, well, yeah, you guys have never won a Super Bowl, like, what do you say to that? You can't say a word to it. Where now it's like, yeah, no, we did. They let us in now. Like,
Yeah.
it's a good feeling. Obviously, I hope I get that. I mean, if the Sixers do, of course, I don't know what I would with the Sixers. I'd be obviously over the moon, and same with the Flyers. Those are the 2 Philly teams I haven't seen one at this point. When the Phillies won, I was excited, but I wasn't like the Eagles. That was I genuinely God, it's almost depressing in a way. I don't think sports will ever get better for me than when the Eagles won that Super Bowl. Like, it was so cathartic and so universally relieving for everybody, and the way it happened against Brady and the Patriots, and I promise we're gonna get back to hoops here in a
Oh
second,
yeah,
but,
oh
like,
yeah. This is a basketball podcast.
yeah,
We're doing podcast
it
second.
was definitely it's one of the best moments of my life. Like, I can confidently say that, and for what it did, I mean, that whole summer, just like there, short of an immediate family member dying, there was nothing that could have happened to me that summer that would have ruined it. Like, it was
Yeah.
just so fun.
I make the joke that getting married was the third happiest day of my life. My wife that joke, but it's still just like seeing like I saw them win in 02, and that was great. But I think after I got myself dedicated to the fan base, like
Yeah.
2020 meant a lot. And that's when like that one sank in. The only reason the Magic to me would mean more is because that was my first sports team,
Yeah.
period. Like my first team was the Orlando Magic. And so seeing them get close, in the 90s and failed, like, okay, that's a bummer. Seeing them get close and lose to Kobe because of bad officiating and also they didn't have the
They
experience.
didn't only lose because of bad. Don't do that. They did not get Sacramento Kings in that series.
I mean, Courtney Lee got fouled. And so
Courtney Lee also should have made that layup.
Courtney Lee got fouled, but that's neither here nor there. But like just seeing them now is like, and it goes back to again why I said ballin' is because we haven't had any type of hope in such a long time.
Yeah.
And like we don't have championship aspirations yet, but I think it's just the fact of there is a future now in Orlando.
Yes. There is
And
there's a foundation to build this team on where you could see them eventually blossoming into a good perennial playoff contender slash maybe championship team if everything goes right. And that's all you really can ask for at this point. Like, it's hard to win NBA titles. There's a reason only one team out of all of them win every single year. Especially in a sport where the individual can make such a difference the way they can in the NBA. But I mean, yeah, the Magic fans should be high. All right. Balling for me this week is the redeemed.
gone.
What's up?
Well, that's right. You haven't gone.
No, I know. I haven't gone. Yeah, the balling for me this week is the redeemed team. LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Netflix announced that there's going to be a docu-series on the '08 Olympic gold medal winning squad, winning over in Beijing. It's going to be coming out again on Netflix. Obviously, as a hoops head, super excited to see this. I love that, obviously LeBron and D Wade on that team, a lot of legends on that team. The only bummer is the obvious one is that Kobe's not going to be there, and Kobe's not going to get to talk about it. One of my favorite points to bring up on this podcast whenever we talk about Kobe is one of Kobe's most impressive games is that '08 gold medal game. Like, US was on the verge of Spain was making a comeback late in that game. It got a little hairy, and Kobe just shut the door. Like, just nailed like 4 straight jumpers and just put them up, shushed them. And I mean, that was a good Spain team. Like, they had the Gasol brothers. Their starting lineup was all NBA players. And I mean, that again,
I think
that was
year, well,
and that was post Athens. So like '04, obviously a massive embarrassment. Like, if they would have brought home gold for a second straight year, it just would have been pretty inexcusable. But they definitely brought the funk back to USA basketball. You know what I mean? That was a year too where all the elite guys went. Like in '04, that was kind of the thing, is where a lot of top players just weren't playing Team USA at that time. Where that year in '08, everybody went. Like, that was had been the best team since the '92 original Dream Team. So I'm super excited about that. Obviously, excited. I'm excited to hear from some of the guys that we maybe haven't heard from in a while either. Like Darren Williams is on that team. I'd love to see what D Will is up to. Obviously Chris Paul is there, so he's another one who always have a lot of great perspective from back then. Carmelo Anthony, having been an Olympian for so long. Hopefully we get all the guys involved with this, but I'm definitely looking forward to that. All right, who's fallen for you this week?
Fallen for me is this idea. I was torn between two, and it was either DeJounte Murray, just for some reason being a guy that's talking when he really shouldn't be. But I found this, and we'll probably go right into this a little bit later. I do not understand why we feel the need to put the New York Knicks out on Christmas. Like, I feel like the New York Knicks as a whole, we can all collectively agree, been terrible. And just to put out like this poor quality product, like we got Philly versus New York, and it's nothing against Philly. They should be playing a better opponent. Like LA, Dallas, like another one's like, okay, why you have LA there? They've been largely awful. Milwaukee, Boston, great game. Memphis, Golden State, a little bit of like a new rivalry. Great. Phoenix and Denver, 2 top teams. Great. why are we trucking out like New York? Like, are we really like that desperate for the money where we have to get that New York market? Let's be honest. They'll watch anything. Like they're not a good team. And I don't know why we keep shelling them out when we want like a good game. That game's gonna be over by halftime, honestly.
Uh, so I am going to save all my thoughts on that for the upcoming NBA schedule release segment that we have because I
Yeah.
don't entirely disagree, but I will play devil's advocate a little bit. We'll get back to that in a little bit. Fallen for me this week is apparently the Celtics visiting locker room. And this is coming from Duncan Robinson. We mentioned a little bit earlier on the show, but he was on. He was actually talking to Pat Connaughton, and he was talking about the Celtics visiting locker room in the Garden. And so Duncan said, if you walked in and said, "quote This is a high school locker room," I would say, "quote That's a shitty high school." And then Pat Connaughton responded. By saying the Boston Celtics locker room is the worst visiting team locker room in the NBA. That was both those comments are in Sports Illustrated. So here's the thing. Sure, I get it, and like listen, those NBA locker rooms, as one would imagine, are quite nice, but is that not like some psychological warfare from Boston? Like, do you
Oh
kind
yeah.
of respect that in a way? Like, yeah, I want to make these guys uncomfortable. Get out of my arena. We're trying to beat you.
It's like, who was it? I want to say there was an Arizona football team that paints the opposing locker room pink or something. But yeah, that's the first I've ever heard of that. And to be honest, like I'm not surprised. Like if you were to say, "Oh, which one of these teams has a really crappy away locker room?" I would have totally said Boston because that seems like the trash thing that Boston would do.
Well, the thing is, like, that's obviously an older arena too. So I think,
Mhm.
you can renovate certain things, but I mean, you can only renovate it so much. I don't know. I'm weirdly like, I guess the room itself, I was kind of torn. I debated like not putting this as ball in, but I'm like, is this really fallen or is this like a weird tactical advantage that I kind of respect from Boston? So I guess it's a little bit of both, but the fact that he said it looked like a bad high school locker room is kind of alarming. It's like, wait, what? A bad one?
Do you want to take my DeJounte one and just be like, "Oh, I have this extra fallen for you. Would you like to use that one instead?"
Well, what? Well, for DeJounte Murray? I mean, they're just like I mean, when we talked about it last week, I just think their beef is so random. Like, and I guess that does transition us well into the schedule release because Chris Haynes talked about that. Let me pull that up actually because that was one of the marquee games, and it kind of just cracks me up because who on earth thought? I mean, I know again division rivals to an extent, but it's like who on earth thought that Paulo Banchero, DeJounte Murray was going to be a must-see matchup here in the first week. But October 21st is that first game. The NBA schedule in full coming out. So we talked a little bit about the Christmas games last week. So I'm going to pull that up. But I guess first, as I pull up some of these specifics here, Chase, did anything jump off the page from you? Is there anything you're excited in particular to watch?
That the Magic actually have nationally televised games.
Yeah, they
It's like,
do.
yeah, I don't think we've had one in 2 years, honestly, and I think I don't think that's a stretch. Like, I think it's honestly been 2 years since, like, the bubble was our last nationally televised playoff game or nationally televised game in general, so I'm just happy to see the hype come back from Orlando. Um, it's weird like to see like a schedule release because it's not like you can do it like what the NFL does, where it's just like, oh hey, it's just like 16 weeks. Let's do this thing, or be like the Chargers. Here's this anime video where it's like,
Right.
oh hey, here's 82 games. We gotta somehow make this work in like a minute clip.
Yeah, it would be cool. I mean, if they could do it for 80. I mean, yeah, make a fun little 10-minute video out of it. Whoever does that, though, will be the first one without a doubt. You'll see everybody copying that in a little bit. But yeah, so the season kicks off on October 18th. You've got Sixers Celtics, and then you've got Lakers Warriors. Lakers and Warriors had leaked a little bit. Obviously, no surprise there. The Warriors are going to be on getting their rings
Mhm.
up against the Lakers. That's fine. I mean, it's LeBron. Anthony Davis is coming back. The Lakers at least have, I guess, a little bit of intrigue in the beginning of the season. Like, I might be more worried about how some of the later ones age, but LeBron's also just going to get these. Like, it is a situation where I'll be like, yeah, LeBron, we are relatively near in the end. So I don't want to, I guess kind of appreciate it while it's there. Sixers and Celtics, forever rivals. That's an easy one if you want an East Coast game.
Mm-hmm.
There will always be, that chippiness anytime they play each other. Plenty of marquee matchups as well. Wednesday is ESPN's first doubleheader of the season. You've got Knicks Grizz, and then you've got Dallas Suns. Dallas Suns is a good one to have right off rip. I like
Yeah,
that.
I like that too.
I would have honestly loved that for a Christmas matchup, just because that is still. I mean, that the NBA never stuns me like that outside of trades and such. I mean, trades and free agency obviously is all over the place, but in terms of the court, I mean, that Phoenix loss is truly one of the most jarring, stunning losses that I've seen in quite a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
It,
so
it that takes the Chris Paul curse to like a whole new level at that point.
it just was unfathomable. Like, I remember, because I was at my brother's graduation that weekend, so I actually didn't get to watch it live. And I just remember my youngest brother, Brad, pulling up his phone at halftime and going and just showing me the score when it was like 53-23. And I was floored. I truly couldn't believe what I was looking at. Obviously, I think Phoenix fans are probably feeling that way as well. Going into the Christmas matchups, you've got Sixers, Knicks, Lakers, Mavericks, Nuggets, Suns, Grizzlies, Warriors, and Bucks, Celtics. I mean, overall, I think the NBA did a pretty good job here.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, so you got the Sixers and the Knicks at first. The Knicks are always in this first game too, so I think there's an awareness of that. You just kind of got to put the Knicks on TV. But because I'm with you, like, I don't think the Knicks should be on. Like, there are better Eastern Conference teams. Like, if I'm Miami, I have an issue with not being on Christmas this year.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm who else in the Eastern Conference? You got Milwaukee, you got I mean, hell, if I'm Chicago, if I'm Toronto, yeah, dude, if I'm Cleveland, I would have beef with not being on the Christmas this year when you
Miami's
have the Knicks on there.
so much better.
But it's the curse, man. They're the number one media market. Like, I understand, because I'm sick of watching the Knicks on Christmas too. I just feel like it's kind of like, I guess I've reached the acceptance phase of it at this point. Like, it just kind of, and I guess me from a Sixers fan, hopefully they're going to win this year. I mean, if we can play the Knicks, that generally helps.
Yeah, you'll have a good Christmas.
But yeah, hoping not watch. They're going to get blown out by 25 now. I don't want to do this too early, but yeah, it is tough. I'm with you to an extent. I wish they'd give us all a break, but it's just that media market. At least I'm going to realize the same way it is with the Lakers. At least they've got the Lakers playing Dallas, and at least the Lakers have LeBron. The
Mm-hmm.
Lakers might be a mess by Christmas. That's the thing. Is so it's like, if they're the same team as they were last year and they're bad again, I'm going to feel the same way. It is kind of interesting how, like, this LeBron Luca thing gets a lot. They always get a lot of national games together, and the first one they ever played was awesome. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember, I forget what the final score was, but it was an overtime thriller. There were tons of big clutch last minute shots, and I feel like ever since then that's just been a default matchup. But it is entertaining. And I mean, Dallas, besides Luca in the conference finals last year, certainly had a strong case to play on Christmas. I would have had them play Phoenix there. Maybe I think that would have been a good matchup if they didn't go that route. Bucks Celtics is a no-brainer. I think these are the two best teams in the Eastern Conference. I think they should absolutely be playing.
Yep.
Grizzlies Warriors, same deal with the chippiness. We talked about that. Great rivalry. Want to see more of that.
Mm-hmm.
We talked a little bit last episode about John Dre's reactions to it, if you want to go back and check that out. And then the West Coast game at that point, I think they always do a pretty good job of picking the two West Coast teams. That have some intrigue there, with Phoenix obviously winning 64 last year, with Denver going to be back healthy, with Jamal Murray back in the lineup. Like, I'm a super Denver believer this year. I think they have a chance to win the conference. They absolutely should feature, especially when you got a two-time MVP. I also think with the 10:30 West Coast game, there's not a lot to lose in terms of ratings. Like, that's kind of where you can get the most creative with it. I guess if I had beef, like my beef rankings with Christmas, if I were going to be upset, the top two that stand out would be Miami, just because, again, with the Knicks thing, and honestly, the Clippers, like with Kawhi and Paul George back, like there's a ton of star power there. I think they could have argued to feature in the later game or against Dallas, but you just know that they're going to put the Lakers. They're not going to have the Lakers and LeBron not on Christmas. That's just, again,
Yeah,
that
you could have also
reality.
had LA versus LA. You could have had the Battle of LA.
Yeah, I would have liked that as well. That would have been a good one. Yeah, and then you could have moved out. Yeah, because you could have done Dallas, Phoenix. I'm just happy Denver's there. Like I am. I'm excited to
Mhm.
watch Denver. I think they're going to be a fun watch overall this year. Um, but I do think largely they got this matchup right. Because I again I think Milwaukee to me, not to get like too much in prediction land here, but I think Milwaukee is the number one team in the East this year. Like I think they're the team to beat. I mean, they took Boston to the brink last year without Chris Middleton, and I don't think they've gotten any worse.
Right.
Bobby Portis is back with a big deal. Connington's back in the mix. They did lose Dante DiVincenzo, but I just think is having the best player in the league also helps like that. Like I think it's Giannis and Steph largely right now.
Mhm.
We'll see what happens there. Before we get out of here, this has been a fun episode with Chase Bunker. Appreciate you filling in. But do you have any? We talked KD trade a little bit earlier. So I don't want to hit on that too much more. I'm basically at the point where like I think he's going to Boston or I don't think he's moving. I think they
Mhm.
ride it out one more year in Brooklyn. Um, I don't think Donovan Mitchell moves. We talked about that a little bit earlier. If he does, it's New York, but I think that would be a mistake. Again, I just think they can get him in free agency.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, are you expecting anything else? I don't think anything else really is going to happen crazy before opening day. Like, I think we're kind of at that point now where we're going to go into camp. Like, any other deal I thought would have been minor. Like, I thought there was a chance the Sixers move Tobias Harris. I don't think that's going to happen now. I think we've reached that point where it feels like that ship has sailed a little bit. Um, it feels like we're getting ready to gear up and we'll go into training camp and that anything now will be, kind of in season as these teams start to form.
Yeah, the only player that I could see possibly getting moved is maybe Kyrie gets moved somewhere because I feel like of all the people, like he might be the only like shippable contract. I think the only things that you have to deal with is like, okay, his absurdness, so to say. And I don't know. I feel like you could probably at least get like a decent haul for him that's not like too much considering like what he's had in his past, how he's been missing games because of his vaccination status. I'm not gonna make this as a political statement or anything, but like that he's missed games because of it. So that's it. Um, the only other person I could think of that we might see move is like Jordan Poole. I know that his name's being thrown around a little bit because of his contract status. Um, I heard that there's been like one Eastern Conference executive said, "Oh, Orlando's going to make an offer," and I just thought, what part of that draft makes you think that Orlando leaks anything?
Yeah, well, that and why would that even make sense? And I mean, obviously, I'm super high on Jordan Poole. I loved what he did last year. I don't
Mhm.
think he's getting moved anyway. I think Golden State's going to figure it out with the contract
Yeah,
situation. So it's kind of a no-brainer. But it's like Orlando doesn't need another guard. Like, why
no,
would they go out and get? I mean, I get the if it was a situation where they were still building that young core, like I would get to take a flyer and maybe spend a little money because you're not spending a lot overall. So spend a little money to bring in a young guy with a lot of upside that has clearly played a lot of big minutes in a championship situation. But that doesn't feel like that.
yeah.
That like he's going to
Do
move
you
at
think
all.
that Kyrie is probably the more easier move out of Donovan Mitchell and Kevin Durant?
Oh, I completely disagree. I think Kyrie's the hardest move out of the three of them. I don't think anybody wants Kyrie right now.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm at that point.
So like even if let's say Philly makes a deal, Tobias and probably like one other person for Kyrie. You're not taking that?
Oh, listen, I would trade for Kyrie if it's Tobias and somebody else, but I think there are plenty of reasons not to trade for Kyrie. And depending on what the somebody else is, I may be a no. Like Kyrie, it's the health and the just nonsense combination. Like he's not going to be in a situation like Brooklyn last year where he's not going to be able to play half your games. But it's like, listen, I watched Cleveland end poorly. I watched Boston end poorly. I'm watching Brooklyn seemingly end poorly. I, I'm not there. Like I'm gonna prove it. It's a prove it situation for Kyrie in terms of like I have no doubt how good he is on the basketball court. Like he's truly one of the more gifted players in the NBA. But he just often isn't on it because of injury. And I would. I'm not dealing with Kyrie's headache right now. Like, and that is genuinely across the board. Like, obviously, if you're not giving up anything and you're taking a flyer, it's Kyrie Irving. I'm not suggesting I wouldn't trade for him, but it is a much like I don't think Donovan Mitchell is going to blow my team up. even with Kevin Durant asking for the opt-out, he's under contract. I don't worry about him blowing my team up. Like Kyrie Irving, Brooklyn is kind of strike three and you're out. Like you're fully improvement mode now at this point, which is a shame, but it kind of speaks to it. The fact that no one came knocking when he became pretty available, it kind of says it all.
I think they were asking for a little bit too much, and I wonder
Well,
if I think that's a Brooklyn thing. Like that
but
was Brooklyn asking for too much.
What do you think they should ask for Kyrie?
Depending on which team asks, it would probably be maybe 2 firsts. And if it's a team like if it's already like on the borderline, then maybe you trade for like one of the role players because you already have Kevin Durant. You've got Ben Simmons already. Like as much as we joke, Ben Simmons is still a great defender and he's great at like getting to the hoop. Like
He is
also a great assist guy. So if you want somebody that is just straight off like the 3-pointer, somebody that's not exactly them, but like a 3-point shooter. So like someone who's been like the JJ Redick or something like that, the Kyle Korvers of like the new era, essentially, journeyman.
Well, I legitimately think they have a real good case unless Boston comes with that offer because the Pelicans say they're not moving Brandon Ingram. I don't think the Sixers can compete with Boston's offer genuinely. I think Boston has a better, like if it's between the JB package and something based around Maxey, like I think Boston just has more and guys that are proven to have again played in the finals, like Grant Williams, huge game 7 against the Bucks to get them there. Rob Williams, busting his ass at 80% and giving them great minutes. I think I also think it would be beneficial for both of them to just run it back in Brooklyn. Like Brooklyn brought a lot of their guys back in. They made some moves that would allow them to continue to contend. It's like if you get them healthy and everybody's playing, I mean, if they win the title in Brooklyn this year, if they were to really go on a run and compete and be real contenders and were to somehow pull off winning a title this year, they basically can do whatever they want at that point. Like you're in the I think Brooklyn management would be a lot more opening to facilitating Kevin Durant if he leaves there with a Larry O'Brien trophy on the table. Like they'd be a lot more willing to let that contract that he signed go when you have him under for 3 years. You win a title, at least you can say you got something out of it. Kyrie's a little different, obviously, but his contract's also different too. So, but I mean, for Kyrie, yeah, that'd be a great way to re-up his status. I think every team in the league would be knocking if Kyrie wins a title this year.
Mm-hmm.
Can't really argue with it if he's got 2 of them. The results would be there.
Yep.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of the Driving Dish NBA podcast. Appreciate you guys as always. Justin will be back next week, unless, God forbid, he gets eaten by a bear in Wyoming. Excited to hear the stories. But again, thanks to my guy, Chase Bunker. Follow him on Twitter at Chase Bunker. Check out the podcast, Bunker's Burning Hot Takes. It's everywhere that you can find this podcast. Again, if you're in Jacksonville as well, make sure you're checking out Chase on 104.5 WOKV. Get all the news that's going on there. Genuinely a great station. I'm not just saying that because I got my career started there as well. I'll obviously always have a ton of love for Jacksonville.
Mm-hmm.
What else? Watch the video version of the podcast on YouTube. Be subscriber number 49, and we will catch you guys next time.